why is it that in general we refer to Metzora coming through speaking Lashon Hara as an effect, as an after effect caused by people speaking Lashon Hara? Because we have it in the Torah. Miriam speaks Lashon Hara, and she immediately becomes a Metzora. So there's a connection right there. And this is a theme that could be found throughout our literature. In addition to that, the word Metzora could also be spelled, or could also be pronounced as Moitzi Ra. You let out negativity. Just like when you speak negativity about somebody else, one of the ways that it's referred to is Moitzi Shem Ra, that you're spreading false rumors, or you're spreading negative rumors about somebody. This is a connection to slandering somebody else. So when you speak negatively about somebody, you're Moitzi Ra. You bring negativity out about the other person, or you're causing negativity. So there's a connection between the word Metzora and speaking Lashon Hara. It's interesting also to note that the Chachamim, when they speak about Lashon Hara, there are a number of prohibitions of Lashon Hara. There's a negative prohibition that we're not allowed to speak Lashon Hara. In addition to that, we also know, we say in the 6 remembrances every single day, remember what Hashem did to Miriam.
Yeah.
So, just like with regards to Shabbos, there is a prohibition that you're not allowed to break Shabbos, and then there's also a positive commandment, remember Shabbos. There's a number of commentators that say that the same applies to Lashon Hara, that there's a prohibition not to speak Lashon Hara, there's a prohibition to speak Lashon Hara, and then there's also a positive commandment that you have to make sure to protect yourself, to be careful of speaking Lashon Hara. So this is also, this is actually according to Ramban, Nachmanides. I thought also a very interesting idea that not very many people are familiar, which points out the seriousness and the importance of this thing, this activity that is somehow a very popular pastime. Though I must say that not everybody agrees that this is a positive commandment as well. So there are a number of opinions. Nachmanides is one of the Mefarshim that say that it is a positive commandment, that you have to protect yourself from not speaking Lashon Hara. The Rambam, Maimonides, does not include it in his mitzvahs, in his enumeration of mitzvahs, of positive commandments. Now
he doesn't include it as a negative?
Yes. So that there's no disagreement about. There is a disagreement whether it is a positive commandment. Now, this connection between speaking Lashon Hara and being inflicted with this thing called Metzora, is it somehow a natural reaction? Is it a supernatural reaction? What would you say? What do you say? Supernatural. David? Supernatural. Huh? Supernatural. You're keeping your answers.
We know it sets into it. That things supernatural. The trap has been laid.
Something opposite, but we know that
clearly. If I'm leading
supernatural.
So it's interesting to note that there are Mefarshim that say that it's a natural reaction. There are Mefarshim that say that this is a natural thing. Or rather, most Mefarshim agree to this, that it's a supernatural reaction. It doesn't make any sense. There should be no connection between, and there's a strong argument with that. And there are some Mefarshim that say that it's a very natural thing, that the automatic cause of speaking Lashon Hara is that a person becomes a Metzora. There are a lot of problems with this, because we see that there's a lot of criteria that a person must go through in order to become a Metzora. For example, Metzora is very unique in the fact that only if a Kohen tells him that he's a Metzora, that's when he becomes a Metzora. So you could have all the conditions, but the Kohen is not available, you're not a Metzora. the Kohen becomes available, then you become Metzora. It says even furthermore, and this is something that's very unique, and I hope to address this soon as well. It says a chassan, a groom, if he becomes a Metzora within 7 days of getting married, he's not a Metzora. The Kohen should wait for 7 days till after he gets married, and only then does he become a Metzora. Same thing is also, a person becomes a Metzora in the middle of Yom Tiv? No, not a Metzora. Not a Metzora.
Really?
You have to wait till after Yom Tov, and only then could the Kohen declare him a Metzora.
Is Metzora
Is Metzora contagious, like leprosy? Like what? No,
Is Lashon Hara contagious?
Is Lashon Hara contagious? No, Metzora is not dangerous. Most Mefarshim agree that this is a supernatural occurrence. It's not a natural thing, it's a spiritual thing, and as we know today, there's no such thing today as a Metzora. Why is that? It would be a natural thing.
We're recording at the same time.
No, I really have a question. It's if nobody sees this, like this person avoid to show, it's not a Metzora?
No. If he doesn't go to the Kohen, and the Kohen never declares him a Metzora, he's not a Metzora. So your question would be, so why should he go?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right.
And the answer to that is, if you have a stomachache, why should you go to the doctor? And why should you go to the doctor? Because you want to be healed.
No.
Why should you go to the doctor?
If it's really punishment, this Metzora.
So why does a person go to the doctor? Just ignore it. Just ignore it. Don't go to the doctor. And some people actually do this, particularly men. Because if the doctor doesn't tell you that you have X, you don't have it. Right? You really don't have it. Unless the doctor says you have it, that's when you get it. At that moment. Earlier you didn't have it. And that's when you start getting depressed and you start getting anxious.
So it's the doctor's fault.
It's the doctor's fault, really. It's the doctor's fault. If you never go to the doctor, you never become ill. Right? So, actually there's some people that behave that way. And possibly there were people that behaved that way in the times of Beis HaMikdash as well, with Metzora. But in general, why do people go to a doctor? Why do people go for help? Because they realize that they have a problem. There's something not right. So there are two ways that we can deal with it. We could either ignore it, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse, as the case is of Metzora, or, and it then affects the person's, because it doesn't start out with the person. It starts out with the person's clothing, goes to the person's house, it goes to the person himself. Right? It doesn't stop.
So it's contagious. It's
contagious to the person himself or his belongings, but it's not contagious to the person's family or to other people. That's right. But when a person realizes that Metzora comes from something, it comes because I did something wrong. So now, the only way for me to correct what I did wrong is if I declare myself as a Metzora, or I find out whether I'm a Metzora or not, and I go through the cleansing process, and then I'm able to free myself from this from the status. So if a person wants to heal himself, a person wants to go up to a higher level, so then he will be strong enough to go to declare himself, to find out whether he is a Kohen, to get himself examined, to find out whether he's a Metzora or not, and for the purpose of moving forward, of moving up and correcting what we did wrong in the past. Some people will choose to ignore that 100%, just like I said, with medical doctors. Some people choose not to go to doctors because if they go, they might find out that they might hear something that they don't want to hear. And I think that this is very similar to the idea of the Metzora, though in a spiritual way. Because what happens with the Metzora, when he actually becomes a Metzora, he has to leave. He's excommunicated. No one's allowed to have any contact with him. Not just his family, but other Metzoraim are also, it's not like there's a special camp for Metzora, you go to Metzora camp for a week. It doesn't work that way. You have to be segregated also from other Metzoraim. You have to leave the Jewish community, you have to be segregated from other Metzoraim as well. And what's the point of this? And this is a very, very important thing. That the idea, what happens when a person speaks Lashon Hara? There's only one thing that happens from it. That you create a separation, you create a segregation, you isolate one person from another person. And this is so true in our life. When you look at, when something negative is said about somebody else, you might have a good friend, somebody you respect, you admire, even if we don't respect her, or somebody that you appreciate, somebody you think, that person, yeah, is a pretty good guy. Someone calls you, that person did. It creates a separation. Even if you'll continue talking to that person and everything will be perfectly fine, you've created separation. So because, the Gemara says that because this Motzi Shemer, because this person that spoke Lashon Hara created separation between two people, the reaction that happens to him, what happens to him, that he has to go through the same thing, that he should understand what it means, he should see what it feels like, he should experience this as what he caused to other people. But what is so severe about Lashon Hara that gets such a reaction? So there's another idea the Gemara shares. It says that all the animals will come to the snake and ask the snake, what did you gain by poisoning other beings and people? And they'll say like this, a lion kills when it's hungry. And all other animals are killed, they're hungry, they kill, they eat, and they relax. A snake is not so. You poison, or you kill other things just because.
No.
That's what the Gemara says.
Okay.
I'm not the source. And this is the point, this is what happened originally with the Adam and Chava and the snake, and this is what the animals will continue saying to us. And the same thing is also the idea of speaking Lashon Hara. People have, and this the Baal Shem Tov points out, or the Talmidei Baal Shem Tov point out, is something that is so terrible about Lashon Hara. That with many other, there are a lot of things that we're not supposed to do. Yet, we gain particular pleasure from engaging, or we might, I wouldn't know, but I think that a person might gain pleasure in engaging in those activities. Let's say eating something that's not kosher. Right? So what's the temptation is? So you want to have that particular, or that person might want to have a tasty food that just happens to be not kosher, or working on Shabbos. You want to have money. The point is not, you don't want to break Shabbos. You want to have money, and you think that by working on Shabbos you'll have more money. So you can't withstand the temptation, the challenge of not working on Shabbos. And same thing applies to all other commandments, to all other prohibitions. Speaking Lashon Hara is very different than that. Every person will tell you that there's no pleasure in speaking Lashon Hara. A person doesn't have a desire to speak negatively about another person. It many times comes from an unfortunate place inside us that we might feel that we make ourselves bigger or better if we speak negatively about another person. There's a story with the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and his brother, the Rebbe Zalman Aron. So there are a lot of stories of both smart children, and they remained smart when they grew up. They were once playing as little children, and the Razah, who was older than the Rebbe Rashab, wanted to be even taller than he was of the Rebbe Rashab. So the Razah told the Rebbe Rashab as a little child to dig a hole. And he told the Rebbe Rashab to stand in the hole. Razah, you see, I'm taller than you. Taller than you. So this was a very good opportunity for their father, the Rebbe Marash, to call them in and to use this to educate them. And his point of education was that if you want to become bigger than someone else, don't put him in a lower place. You should raise yourself to a higher place. That's how you become bigger than someone else, not by putting someone else down. But so really this desire, so to speak, of speaking Lashon Hara is not, we don't gain pleasure from it. It's not something that something that you gain from it. It's just, sometimes it comes from insecurity. Sometimes it comes because, unfortunately, we don't have anything else better to speak about. And this is where it comes from, really. It's interesting that from the Rebbe and in general Chassidus, there isn't very much discussion on the severity of speaking Lashon Hara. I can't recall that the Rebbe should speak about the severity of speaking Lashon Hara. Perhaps the Rebbe mentioned it, but it wasn't something that... And when I think about it, you think about how severe it is. Why is it? Not to say that the Rebbe also didn't speak about how severe it is to break Yom Kippur. So it's not to say that this was singled out somehow. But I think that the idea is there's...
It wasn't his emphasis on Ahavas Yisrael?
That's right.
The two are incompatible.
And that's one of the idea. That's a point that I wanted to make. Almost. There's an idea from the Kotzker Rebbe. There's a vart that they repeat from the Kotzker Rebbe. He said that he doesn't want his Talmidim to sin because they control themselves from sinning. He doesn't want his Talmidim to have such self-control that they stop themselves from doing something wrong. He wants the students to be so preoccupied with better things that they don't have time to do things wrong. That's what they say. That's what they quote from the Kotzker.
It's the definition of Yom Kippur.
Right. And I think that this is the approach of Chassidus, this is the approach of the Rebbe. Where does Lashon Hara come from? You sit and think about somebody else's negativity. And then you have to make yourself bigger. Yeah. So you speak about somebody else's negativity. You see the darkness in another person. Chassidus emphasizes the importance of not seeing the darkness in somebody else, not seeing the negativity in another person, not seeing the ugliness of another person. And on the contrary, as the Baal Shem Tov repeated many times, that a person is like a mirror, and if you see darkness in another person, it's because that thing could be found within yourself. So you see negativity, unfortunately, within another person, that's no reason to go run around spreading it, because the only thing you're saying is that I have that thing within myself. And perhaps, and this is, I think this is very similar to the idea a lot of people speak about. It's very popular to speak about tolerance. You have to tolerate other people. You have to tolerate other. Tolerance, in my opinion, is an awful, awful word. Tolerance is saying, really, we hate each other, yet we have to tolerate each other. That's not the Jewish approach. The Jewish approach is we have to love your fellow Jew. Love him. Not tolerate him. Tolerate him is like, I can't stand you, but I'll just bite down on my tongue. I'll bite hard. That's tolerance. Yiddishkeit, the Torah emphasizes you should love your fellow Jew. And the same thing is also with regards to the idea of Lashon Hara and Lashon Hara. The point is not... The question is how we look at another person. What you see in another person. When you look at another person, what do you see? Do you see their negativities, or do you see their strength? Do you see their qualities? I might have mentioned this, but I think that this is a very true point. Somebody I was having a conversation with somebody who was telling me that he's having a hard time educating his son because he wants his son to have real role models, and he has a hard time finding real role models because who I won't say which city he was talking about, but there's so every person, people that are in positions of leadership. And there's corruption, and there's negativity, and there's lying, and there's cheating, and there's... I don't know, we don't have to go into something that we all know. And wherever you turn, look, he has a very hard time in telling his son what kind of role model to have, who to have a role model. So, I never even thought of that. Because the way I try to look at it, and this is the way I try to educate my children, is to see the qualities of every single person. It's true. You will find within every single person that you look at, we're all human beings, no matter what type of positions or titles we might have, we have shortcomings, and we have weaknesses, and we have deficiencies, and we have, sometimes, unfortunately, we have challenges or temptations that sometimes we can't overcome. And if you're going to look for that, you're going to find that, and it's not going to be very hard. For most people, it's not going to be very hard to find the shortcomings or the imperfections in another person. The question is, what do you see in another person? When you look at another person, do you see the goodness? Do you see the neshama? Do you see the beauty, the holiness, what's bright and shining in the other person? Or do you see these shortcomings? And this is the approach of Chassidus, of focusing on seeing the good in another person.